na ibuke ni Prime Minister, Minister of Economy, Attorney General. Na kamunanga ni Vanua. Na kamunanga ni nomni dingome na Vanuango. Na kamunanga ni kena dingome na matani tu. O mai labeta na kemni sera usam-saba. Sa kalunga tana Vanua. Ratiwa ni kuwa. Ena nomani ako mai. Kima mondorong di kemni tunga na walesi. Ini kuwa sa woti na titiro ena ililombuawa. Na sabirai ena matana botu. Sa tiungo na lenu Vanua. Buda Bay. Mebere di kemni. Kau tu batu tumai na nonra dola. Esa na tarar bia taronga. Ena nomani ako mai ni kuwa. It's a blessing to everybody.
Loa Village, everybody. As they say in Nonronga, Loa Village. Thank you for having us here this morning. This is the first time that we've actually come to Vanua Levu rural area for budget consultations.
Thank you very much.
And this was because of some very strong representations made by people from Loa Village in Mendaratu in Lambasa a couple of weeks ago. We have done budget consultation rural areas in Viti Levu, but not in Vanua Levu. Previously we had budget consultation in Vanua Levu only in Savu and Lambasa. So we are here this morning, and then later on after this we go to Tawake. That's another deep rural area in Vanua Levu. And then tonight we go to Lambasa, and in the morning we have a consultation in the Lambasa Civic Center. Then we go back to Viti Levu in the afternoon. So thank you for having us. We have, budget consultation presentation for you. Budget, of course, is a very important piece of, it's a very important event, because the budget sets out every year how much money government will spend the following year and what is the goal of the budget. Not just for 1 year, but all the following years. As you can see over here, we saw coming down, the electricity line comes up to a particular area and it stops. In the budget we have allocations where we can extend the electricity line. There are people, for example, who want to be connected to water. There's people who want to have their road star sealed. People want free education. People want, for example, connectivity to internet. People need new bridges, they need Irish crossings, they need the footpaths. All are those sorts of things that are addressed always in the budget. As a government, what we have been doing in the past number of years is that we're not only thinking about the following year, we have to think 10, 15, 20 years down the track. That's what a good budget is all about. What we wanted to do today is do a very quick presentation to you about all the things that's happening in Fiji and also outside Fiji. And what can we do as a country to deal with some of those challenges, and also at the same time, what are some of the things that it's beyond our control. We have to understand that, and how best do we deal with it. So I'll do a quick presentation. After that, I don't want to do too much talking. I want to hear from you. What are your issues? What are the things you want addressed? And how we can work together to ensure, in particular, what is happening in the world at the moment, there's a lot of uncertainty. And what we can do to be able to tackle that as a nation. Can I stand up?
Yeah.
Please, if you don't mind.
Okay.
This basically shows you the point I want to work with is too much light. But over here, because of COVID-19, our economy became much smaller. You see, the economy was growing over here. Because of COVID, it became smaller. Why? Because the borders all shut down. Nobody expected that in the 21st century that the borders in the world will shut down. Not just in Fiji, but Australia, New Zealand, USA, Great Britain. When COVID came around, nobody knew what would happen, whether we were all going to die off, the young people die first, the old people die first, nobody knew. And eventually, as time went by, more and more people, we got to know about it. So, our economy, we lost about $4.6 billion in the GDP in 2 years. We lost about $4 billion in foreign exchange. What is foreign exchange? Foreign exchange is what we call foreign dollars. Everybody over here, you're all wearing clothes. Some of the clothes you're wearing is sewn in Fiji. Some of it is not sewn in, some of it may be sewn overseas. But all the fabric comes from overseas. You all have mobile phones, it comes from overseas. I'm holding this mic, it comes from overseas. You buy the tiles for a house, it comes from overseas. The corrugated tin, the actual tin is made overseas, it gets corrugated in Fiji. You have all the cars on the road, it comes from Fiji, from overseas. When we go overseas to buy these cars, they don't want Fijian dollars, they want Japanese yen. When you buy all the fuel, you see your generator is running on fuel. 3 fuel companies in Fiji, they buy the fuel from Singapore. They need US dollars. So you need foreign exchange to be able to trade. All of you eat purini, bambakau, pani keke, bread, scone, roti, all of that is made from flour. Flour is made from wheat. We don't grow wheat in Fiji. Only 2 companies in Fiji, they make flour. Punja and Sons in Lautoka and Navutu, and in Suva, FMF in Wallu Bay. They buy the wheat from overseas, they grind it, put some vitamins, you get flour. All of that comes from overseas. So you need foreign currency. You need Australian dollars, US dollars. When the tourists come to Fiji, they bring foreign currency. When Fiji Airways flies and they sell a ticket in Australia, New Zealand, USA, they bring foreign currency. But because the borders all shut down, we lost about $4 billion in foreign exchange. Government revenue went down by half. 50% gone. Borders shut down, no tourists, no economic activity, borders are locked down. You know, Lautoka, Nandi was locked down, Suva was locked down, some parts in Vanuatu was locked down. That stops economic activity. So also government loses revenue from that. So you can see our economy, other countries too, these are the tourism countries, you can't see them well. You know, St. Lucia, Mauritius, Maldives, all of these countries, you can see they lost so much of the economy because of that. Over 100,000 Fijians lost their jobs because of COVID. People working in the hotels, people working in the chefs, the taxi drivers at the hotels, all of those people they lost, they had no employment. But you also have to understand, in particular in places like Viti Levu that got hit very hard. If you go outside Nandi Airport, there's some trees there, you only see a lot of ladies, they sell boiled ebi, lava pack, roti parcel, mitai. Now these people's customers are not the tourists. Their customers are the people who work at the airport, people who work at Fiji Airways, people who work at ATS. So when the airport is shut down, there's nobody working, these people also lose business. We affected a lot of people. Now, what we of course did was, in order to help them, government gave about $500 million in unemployment benefit. And I'll explain to you how that money was spent. You can see over here, the Fijian economy was growing every year for the past 9 years. It never happened in Fiji before, where for 9 straight years, the economy grows. Because of COVID, it went into negative. Lost about 17.2%, then 4.1%. We expect the economy, however, to start growing again this year. Why? Because the borders have opened up. How did we manage to get the borders open up? As you would have heard last year, around about March, April, over 3,000-4,000 cases of COVID in Fiji. Everybody thought, oh, you know, it's all bad now. But the moment the word vaccine was mentioned, we knew that if we did not try diplomatic efforts, we won't be able to get the vaccine. So our Prime Minister spoke to all our bilateral partners, you know, individual countries, Australia, New Zealand, India, USA, everybody else. We went and spoke to the World Bank, ADB, IMF. A lot of people, I think, in Fiji don't appreciate what has happened. Because as soon as vaccines came about, every country wanted vaccine, very quickly. So if you look at a country like USA, the population of USA is about 300 million. they go to the pharmaceutical company, they'll say, I want to place an order for 600 million vaccines, because you have to take it twice. 600 million. If Fiji goes then to the pharmaceutical company, we're only 900,000 people. You say 1.8 million doses. Who will get the order? Of course the one with the large order. USA will get it first. All the small countries got it last. But because of our efforts, we're able to get over 90% of the population vaccinated in such a short period of time. As a result of that, we're able to open the borders. Because remember, nowadays when tourists come, when they want to travel overseas, they look at how safe the country is. When you get vaccinated, it's not just for you and your family and your village or your community, it's also how other people will view Fiji. If they think that a lot of people in Fiji have been vaccinated, then they feel safe to travel to Fiji. Otherwise they won't travel to Fiji. So a lot of countries, because the rate of vaccination is very low, they're not getting the tourists. Whereas we started getting the tourists. That's why economy is going to grow. So now we expect the economy to grow by 12%. As you can see over here, as I mentioned, grow by 12%. You can see the number of tourists we had. Before COVID, we had nearly 900,000 tourists. After COVID, dropped down to 147. Then last year was only 32,000 people who came to Fiji. Now we're expecting about 400,000 people to come. Why is this important? You may say, well, we don't get tourists in Loa Village, so who cares? It matters to everybody. Because when more tourists come, we get more money in the country. When you get more money in the country, the government gets more money too. So when the government gets more money, we can do your electrification. We can extend the electrification grid. During COVID time, a lot of the projects we put on hold because we have to make sure first that we look after people who don't have jobs. We pay $500 million. If you sell at Savu Savu market, at the moment you don't pay market fees. We are paying it for you on your behalf. You sell at Lambasa market, we're paying for you on your behalf. No. If you're a fisherman, you want to apply for the license, the fishing license, we pay for you on your behalf. No. All the school children in Fiji, they don't pay single school fees. Textbooks we pay for. Bus fares we subsidize. Even though there was COVID, we did not stop it. Because for us, education of children is very important. They want to go to university, they get a topper scholarship, we pay for everything. Or they get TELS. All of that we did not stop. Some adjustments made, but we did not stop. So where are all the tourists coming from? If you look at it, in the month of May, 90% of the people who came to Fiji, sorry, no, I shouldn't say that. 90% of the Australians who came to Fiji in 2019 have returned to Fiji. So most of the tourists are coming from Australia. The second lot are the New Zealanders. And then of course then the Americans. If you look at the Fiji Airways flights, they're all full at the moment. And we have been in the past 2 years protecting Fiji Airways. We have to be very proud of Fiji Airways. It's our national airline. If you don't protect it, so because then all the international airlines, they'll come and go whenever they please like, whenever they feel like. At the moment when there's a cyclone, the last plane to fly is Fiji Airways. After the cyclone, the first plane to fly is Fiji Airways. It creates a lot of Fijian jobs. Flight attendant, people who do the catering, the food. So Fiji Airways now, of course, started flying first. And now June and July bookings are looking really good. Everybody will tell you the price of things are going up. Now there's a number of reasons why price of things are going up. There are two types of things that we say about what we call inflation. Inflation means the cost of things going up and down. You see this red line here? This red line here is what you call the imported inflation. Things that come from overseas that we don't have any control over. This green thing here is what you call domestic inflation. Let me give you a simple example. Before Cyclone Winston, a kilogram of yongona in Suva cost $85 a kilo. After Cyclone Winston, cost $185 a kilo. Because a lot of the yongona plantations got damaged. Demand is high, low supply. And so if tomorrow, for example, God forbid, if they say some kind of disease in the dalo plants in Vitilevu, so there'll be less dalo, So all your one level price of dollar will go up because you are the supplier. People still want to eat dollar, but low supply, so price will go up. That's what you call supply and demand issue. After the pandemic, two things happened. We had what we call supply chain issue. You see this computer, all the phones that you are holding is made out of a microchip. The microchip makes the phone work, makes the computer work. The microchip is made out of a metal that comes from the ground. So when you have lockdown in countries, the mining stopped. So there's less metal, but people still want the phone. People still want the computer. So if there's less microchips, that means less is made. Few phones are made, few computers are made, but people still want it. When you have few things and a lot of people want it, the price will go up. Like the Yongana. In Viti Levu, I don't know, probably happening in Lambasa too, are long beans. You know long beans, a bundle of long beans costs $2. After the cyclone, $5. Supply and demand issue. What also happened is, after the pandemic, China was still in lockdown. Some parts of China are still in lockdown. China is the largest manufacturer in the world. Most of the things we have probably made in China. So when they're in lockdown, the containers that come in, they also lock down. So there's less containers in the world. So the cost of freight goes up. One container from New Zealand to Fiji to Suva before pandemic used to cost $5,500. After the pandemic, went up to $16,500. One container. So if this gentleman here, if say if he brings say tin fish from New Zealand to sell in the village in his shop, and he buys one tin fish from New Zealand at $5 a tin. If tomorrow, and then he sells it to you, say $7, buys it for $5, sells it to you for $7. That's his profit. But if tomorrow New Zealand sells him the same tin of fish at $7, he can't sell it to you for $7. Right? He's going to make a loss. He might as well shut down his business. He'll sell it to you for $9. That's how the cost of things go up. And that's what's happened actually globally. Of course, then we have the Russia-Ukraine war that came around. Yes, Russia and Ukraine war has caused a lot of problems now. I'll show you a video now. Please watch the video. In the video, it will show you that Ukraine and that part of the world can feed 400 million people. They grow so much wheat. That part of the world also makes, the fertilizer you have, all the chemicals, urea, potassium, they all are made there, a lot of bulk of it. Russia is also the third largest producer of oil, fuel. There's a gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, the cooking gas, all the way on land, directly to Germany. Of course, after they invaded Ukraine, the Ukrainian farmers can't sell their wheat. America said we have to put a trade ban on Russia to punish them for invading Ukraine. Europe is also punishing them, so the gas supply is not there. The wheat supply is not there. People still want wheat. You still want to eat the puruni and the bambakao. People still want to eat the roti. People still need the gas to cook their food. You still need kerosene. Less supply, high demand. So that had added a lot of cost to why things have gone up in price. Let me show you this video, and please have a look. You got the mic there? Thanks. How much here? Okay.
Previously, they were buying the packet 140. For now, it is 180. And the salad, we used to buy around 180 per liter. But for now, 300 shillings is really tough for us.
food to feed 400 million people on planet Earth. So when the farmers on the battlefields aren't planting or aren't harvesting, what impact do you think that's going to have? You've got a catastrophe knocking and looming on the door for the fall. That will be not a price issue, but a supply issue, availability of food for people around the world, and that will be a catastrophe on top of a catastrophe.
You can see from that Ukraine feeds 400 million people in the world. We are lucky in Fiji, we have dalo and cassava. We have uto. In North Africa, in the Middle East, in some parts in Asia, the only carbohydrate they have is made from wheat, bread. You know, the bread is different to our bread. They have the round bread and all of that. People in the morning when they go to buy bread over there, they fight with each other. I was just told yesterday the loaf of bread in USA at the moment costs $8 US. That's 16 Fijian dollars. So it's not only in Fiji that the price of things have gone up. In fact, if you look at, and I'll show you a slide again, if you compare us to some of the other countries, our inflation rate is a bit lower. In some countries in the world, nearly everything they eat is imported. You go to a country like Singapore, cabbage, vegetables, everything comes from other countries. They don't have any farms. So it depends on what are the things that you're buying from overseas. So obviously, like all the hardware in Fiji, none of the hardware except for a few things, like nails are made in Ba, really most of the things are made overseas. So you expect the price of that to go up. Now what we are told at the moment is that the cost of freight should start coming down, because China is now opening up, so more containers will be made available. When more containers are made available, the cost of freight should come down. With the oil, we don't know. It depends on how long this war will go on for. God forbid that they start war in some other country. You don't know, it could spread. We are told that President Biden is going to Saudi Arabia next week to talk about the fuel pricing and all of that. So, God willing, something good comes out of that, and the price of fuel should come down. But as you saw today, on the 1st of July, the price of fuel has gone up again. Completely outside our control. Now, you remember that I mentioned about the foreign exchange. You need foreign exchange to be able to buy things from overseas. You need to be able to manage your economy well, so you can, in fact, not have any problems when the crisis arises. Sri Lanka is one country where there are lots of problems. And as a result of that, they don't have enough foreign currency to now even buy fuel, even buy basic medicine. They can't. A lot of problems. The debt is really blown out. They can't do the repayments. So I'll show you that, and that actually is having an impact on them, people being able to eat. So they're now in Sri Lanka, they're setting up what we call food kitchens, community food kitchens. So at least you can go and have one meal. People are donating food, they cook the food for you, you can eat there once a day. Please just play the other.
Helping put food on the table. Community kitchens like this are starting up around Sri Lanka as people struggle with its worst economic crisis in more than 70 years. Food inflation has hit nearly 60%, and many people are finding it difficult to cope.
Most of these community who are coming today or been coming are surviving with 2 meals. So we are giving them the responsibility of surviving for 1 meal, and we are saying, right, we will support you with 1 meal, but a good healthy meal.
Few now get to eat this well.
It's very difficult. We rarely get food like this. Only my husband is working, but what he earns for a day is not enough to feed the 3 of us now.
Tax cuts 3 years ago slashed government revenue by more than $2 billion. The tourism industry was then damaged by the Easter bombings and the pandemic. Now there is no money to import fuel, medicine, cooking gas or food.
Right now, actually, our main focuses are on food banks, on community kitchens, and again, long to medium term community gardens and home gardens, because we can give rations, but it's very short term.
The government is appealing for help.
We urgently require the assistance of our friends in the international community to ensure that our immediate needs in terms of the importation of essential medicine, food supply and fuel are met.
India and China have sent food and medicine in recent days. The opposition says the government has weakened the economy through populist policies and mismanagement. A nationwide campaign dubbed Gota Go Home has been running for 2 months, calling on the president to resign. The government is seeking a loan package from the International Monetary Fund or IMF. Critics say it'll take too long, even if agreed, and people need action now. Tens of thousands of Sri Lankans are going hungry amid the country's worst economic crisis in decades. Community kitchens like this can only feed a fraction of them. Minna Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
If you see the inflation rate in USA, it's 8.5%. Fiji is 5% at the moment. Japan is the lowest, 1.2%. Europe area is 7.4%. Australia is 5.1%. New Zealand is 6.9%. United Kingdom or Great Britain is 9.1%. That's how high rate the inflation is. This over here is from the World Food Organization. It shows you the rising prices of things. You can see fuel. You can see over here the cereals. You can see like dairy products, the food price index, the meat price index. All of it is going up. One of the lowest, of course, is sugar, unfortunately for us, because we export sugar. All of these things are rising globally. So, as you know, in the revised budget, we said no more VAT on 21 items, because we knew this was happening. If we did not zero rate VAT on these items, you'd be paying 9% more. So if you look at these things, sugar, no VAT, flour, no VAT. Flour comes from overseas, wheat, through wheat. Rice, most of the rice you eat in Fiji comes from overseas. Some are grown in Vanuatu. Canned fish, some comes from overseas, some from Fijian fish. But a lot of people buy the overseas mackerel. All overseas. Cooking oil, none of it is made in Fiji. It's only packed in Fiji, but all comes from overseas. Potatoes, not grown in Fiji, from New Zealand. Onions, New Zealand. Garlic, New Zealand, China. Baby milk, not made in Fiji. Powdered milk, not made in Fiji. Only packaged in Fiji. All comes from overseas. They put in small packets and they sell it to you. Liquid milk, some Fijian liquid milk, but most of it comes from overseas. Dal, overseas. Tea, overseas. Salt, overseas. Soap, mainly overseas. Some raw ingredients, some people make a little bit of soap, but the raw ingredients come from overseas. Soap powder, overseas. Toilet paper, some Fijian toilet paper. Sanitary pads for women, overseas. Toothpaste, mainly overseas. Kerosene, overseas. Cooking gas, overseas. So you can see so many of the things that you use comes from overseas. And the price of those things, you have to add the freight, you have to add what's happening globally in other parts of the world, and that's when the price lands in Fiji. For flour, for example, we have what we call price control. So as I mentioned, only 2 companies make flour. So say Punja and Sons, when they buy the wheat, normally they buy the wheat from Australia. So say if they buy wheat at $300 a ton, they bring it to Fiji, they grind it, they put some vitamins, you get flour. Before they sell the flour, because you can't go to the factory and buy it, they sell it to the supermarket. So before they sell it to the supermarket, they can't sell it at any price. They have to go to the Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission. They'll say, look, I bought the wheat at $300 a ton. This is my labor cost, my electricity cost, all my costs. then FCCC will say to them, okay, you can sell it for only this much margin you can make. And then they sell it at that price to the supermarket. So the supermarket will then say, look, I'm renting a shop in town, this is my rental cost, my labor cost, electricity cost. And they say, before you sell it to the public, you can make only this much margin. That's what you call price control. But if the price of wheat from Australia goes from $300 to $400, the price will obviously go up too. Still price control, like the tin fish. Same thing. So, despite all of these things happening, our dollar has not been devalued. I think a lot of people don't understand. If government did not do it right, today the value of Fijian dollar would have gone down in value. We would have to devalue it. Can you imagine if the Fijian dollar devalued, you would have had paid even more, because most of the things you use or eat comes from overseas. So despite government losing 50% of the revenue, we made sure that all the things that we wanted to help people continue. We paid $432 million in unemployment benefit, mainly in Vitilevu, but also people who here who lost their jobs, who had FNPF accounts. We said you could take out money from a general account. If the money finished, we paid you $225 a fortnight. Even people here in Savu and Lambasa, all of those people, we paid $225 a fortnight. And then, of course, we paid, the 2 rounds of $360. We paid also the 2 rounds of $50, $90. Now, of course, we've had also, you can go and see a private doctor. You can go and see a private doctor, and it's free for you. It's on our webpage. The doctors' names are listed. So I think one new one has just started in Savu Savu. What's his name? Dr. Ishak. He's the only one who applied. So we've agreed on a price. So today, if you go and see Dr. Ishak, he's a private doctor. He can take your blood test, your sugar test, kidney test, liver, cholesterol, urine test. If you are asthmatic, the nebulizer, all of that you can use, we pay for that. All of that is done. Injection, we pay for that. Because we want people to also use the private doctors. It makes it easy, because a lot of people sometimes they go to the nursing station or the hospital for something that's minor. They have to wait for like 2 hours. So it's better you go and see the private doctor and we pay for it. So you have one doctor. Of course, in other parts of Fiji, you have a lot more doctors. All of those things we contribute. We reduce tax, we reduce stamp duty. Now you want to start a business, no longer for business license. Don't need a business license. Unless you're selling cooked food. Then you need the health and safety check. The health inspectors. We also gave $200 million for loans. A lot of people have got loans under the concessional loan. Where you get that loan, the interest rate we pay for you for the first 2 years. You don't do any other repayments. Only in the third year you start repaying. A lot of people have got loans like that. I think FDB gave about $70 million in that loan scheme. A lot of people now in Fiji, they talk about debt. Yes, I live in Ndinau. This thing is going around at the moment. As you know, of course, it's election year. Everybody wants to become an expert on everything. But let me tell you the debt situation. There's 2 ways of measuring debt. One of the most common ways of measuring debt is what you call debt to GDP ratio. The value of your GDP and what percentage of it is in debt. This is the most common form. You look at a country like New Zealand, before the pandemic, the debt to GDP ratio was 28%. After the pandemic, it became 52%, nearly double. Australia from 42 to 62. Malaysia 56 to 71. Seychelles, St. Lucia, Mauritius, Bahamas, these are tourism-based countries like us. You can see how much the debt increased by. St. Lucia went from 60 to 96. Fiji is here 46 to 80%. It's now actually come down to 79. USA is 107 to 133. Japan is 257%. Nobody says that Japan is a problem. Our own people are picking on Fiji. In other countries, debt levels are much higher. can see the Fijian economy, of course, our debt to GDP ratio is coming down. Do you know after Cyclone Winston how much money we spent? $500 million just to fix up things. That's why we don't like climate change. That's why our Prime Minister is talking about climate change. When we go to international, we talk about climate change. We spent over $200 million just to fix up schools in Fiji. Most of the schools in Fiji is not owned by government. It's owned by the Methodist Church or the Catholic Church or the Muslim League or Sanatan Dharam, Seventh-day churches, all of this. The community school, maybe a village school run by the community. But when there's a cyclone, the school gets damaged, who fixes it up? Government. The schools expect government to fix it up. And we're doing it. So we spent over $200 million just to fix up the schools. Then of course when bridge gets washed away, Irish crossing gets washed away, there's a landslide, we have to clear it. All of those things. Combined we spent $500 million in Winston. So despite Winston, we still, our debt to GDP ratio started going down. It started going down. Of course, we started paying more when the cyclone came and the pandemic came, then the debt to GDP ratio went down. See, because the way that we look at the budget and government is that before the thinking was like we have a pie. So if we want to give something to the people in Loa, we have to take it from maybe Maduata, then give it to Loa. That's what they thought. They always thought the pie was the same size. What we want to do is increase the size of the pie. The pie was increasing with the 9 years of growth. When you increase the pie, then more and more people can have stuff. Before the pandemic, the amount of people who got connected to electricity was the highest amount of people in such a short period of time. We were here a few months ago. There are certain schools in Vanuatu that did not have internet connection. We've connected 40 schools, including nursing stations, in Vanuatu. And if there's a school was here, there's a village nearby, we put a Wi-Fi around the school compound so people can come and use their phones with the Wi-Fi. So for us that's really important because we want to connect people in rural areas and get them to have services, the same services that people have in the cities and towns. That's very important. That's what we call inclusive development. So that's what we've been doing as part of the overall government planning, budget planning. The other way of looking at measuring debt is the dollar value, right? 2 billion, 5 billion, 7 billion, whatever it is. This is in billion dollars. This is USA, US dollars. Bahamas, which is a tourism country, their debt is 11.4 billion US dollars, which is about 23 billion Fijian dollars. Mauritius 11.2 billion, Barbados 6.6 billion, Maldives 6.3, very tourism-based country, 6.3 billion US dollars. We are 3.7 billion US dollars, which is about 8 billion Fijian dollars. That's our debt, in dollar value. And then of course you have these other countries, Suriname, Aruba, St. Lucia, much smaller countries than ours. Let's look at the big countries. This is US dollars, but not billion, trillion. Hope you can understand trillion. Trillion is the next step up from billion. United States debt is $30.5 trillion. In other words, 60 trillion, about 62 trillion Fijian dollars. Japan debt is 13 trillion. China is 12 trillion, sorry. United Kingdom is $3 trillion. US dollars, which is 6 trillion Fijian. India 2.8 trillion, Australia $1 trillion. So you can see the difference between us and other countries. But nobody in Fiji says, that USA has got too much debt. Nobody says Japan has got too much debt. So please understand when people talk about debt. There are two things you need to understand about debt. Two questions you have to ask. If you're going to borrow money, what are you borrowing the money for? First question. Second question is, when you're borrowing the money, how much you paying for the debt? Right. So if government decides, they said, oh, this is a very nice place here in Loa, let's build a big convention center there on top of that hill. Every time any minister comes to this part, they can stay there. And we spend, $20 million to build it. That's stupid. That's stupid use of money. Why would you spend $20 million in a place that may get used only 3-4 times? You guys may like it, oh nice, near the law, but it's stupid use of money. You don't borrow money to do that. If you're borrowing money to connect you to electricity, that's good use of money. Because you are getting empowered, you're getting electrified. Your children can get access to electricity. When you go and do your fishing, you can have a fridge, you can store your fish. When you do your vegetable farming, you can store it. It's what you call increasing the productive capacity. If you're borrowing money to help people with unemployment benefit during COVID, it's a good use of debt. Because you know that people won't go hungry. If you're borrowing money to connect people to electricity, to tahsil roads, that's good use of money. That's number one. You have to understand what the money is being borrowed for. Number two is, what is the cost of the money you're borrowing? This gentleman here, he decides to borrow $100,000 to start a business, say in the village. He goes to BSP, they said, no problem, we'll give you $100,000. You pay us back in 3 years' time, 15% interest rate. This gentleman here, he decides to go into business also. He wants to also borrow $100,000. He goes to Home Finance. They say, no problem, we'll give you $100,000, 30 years to pay, 1% interest rate. If I look at both of them, both of them got $100,000 debt. Right? You say, oh, they're the same. They're not. He has to pay the debt in 3 years' time. He has to work really hard. He'll have high blood pressure. Because he has to make a lot of money to do his repayments. Pay it all off in 3 years. He's relaxed. 1% interest rate, 30 years to pay. He has a lot of pressure on what we call cash flow. He has to make plenty of money to pay the money back. He's only got 3 years to pay. He doesn't have to make that much money to pay off the debt. You see the difference? We have borrowed from the Japanese and they've lent it to us because we manage our economy well at 0.01%. 0.01%. 40 years to pay. 10-year grace period. In other words, first 10 years you don't do any repayment. And you start paying from the 11th year. But because it's 0.01% and 40 years to pay, by the time you end up paying the money, you're only paying back 40% of what you borrowed. The World Bank is lending to us at 0% and 0.75% service fee. By the time we pay them the money, we're only paying back about 45%. Why is that? Because when you have such low interest rates, and you have to pay that amount of money that you borrowed, say today, in 40 years' time, the dollar value becomes less. Some of you are old enough to know, before for 5 cents you can get 10 Chinese lolly. Right? 5 cents you get 10 Chinese lolly. Today you can't buy 1 Chinese lolly for 20 cents. A house built today will cost far more in 20 years' time. A road tahsil today will cost far more in 20 years' time. So when people talk about, oh, there's too much debt for the younger generation, they don't know what they're talking about. If we're borrowing money for the right reason, the younger generation won't have to tahsil the road. We do it for them now. You get a lot more activity, a lot more tourists will drive along. Oh, let's go to Loa Village, we can see the bay here. You get economic activity. So when people come and talk to you about debt, you have to understand those two things. What are you borrowing the money for, and how much is that money costing you? Okay, this is what I talked to you about foreign reserves. You see, the International Monetary Fund says that you should have enough foreign currency to do trading for 3 months, at least. That's a benchmark. This is the amount of foreign currency Fiji had in 2010, 1.3 billion. 2011, 1.5 billion, it goes on. This is the number of months we could trade with that money. See, when the economy is really moving, a lot of home construction is going on, a lot of people are buying vehicles, you need more foreign currency. Because we buy nearly everything from overseas, so you need more foreign currency. So over here, even though we have 2 billion, we had only about 4.5 months worth of trading. Why? Because a lot of construction was going on. Today we have $3 billion in foreign currency. We have about 8.4 months of trading. So in a good space. The Sri Lankan video you saw before, they don't have enough foreign currency to even pay the repayments for their debt. That's the problem. They don't have enough foreign currency. Now, liquidity, I don't spend too much time on this. Liquidity basically means how much money is there in the banks, in the banking system. See, we knew when COVID took place that if the economy is going to become smaller, one day the economy will open up. So when the economy opens up, people will need access to money to build things. And when people want money to build things, we want the interest rate to be less. One way of making the interest rate less is to have lots of money in the banking system. Banks don't sit down and say, oh, I got $2 billion in my bank account. For them, that's not a good sign. For them, the banks always say, how much money are we lending? Because remember, the banks make money from lending money to you. They're not going to lend it to everybody. They know as long as you can pay back, they want to lend more money to you. Because they make their money from interest. That's their business. Their business is selling money and making money from interest. So because we borrowed more from overseas during COVID, we did it deliberately. There's a lot more money in the banking system. You see? $2.1 billion to be lent. The interest rate has come down now, 5.6% on average. So when the economy opens up more, we get more tourists, more people want to build. Somebody wants to build an eco lodge. FDB, for example, can easily lend them money. So, as I highlight most of this, tourism is now recovering. We've been growing the economy in other areas also. We're not only dependent on tourism, we're dependent also on agriculture and various other areas. There are two things that keep us awake at night. One is climate change. See, in this cyclone season, we had only one cyclone, but it rained so much that the highway between Singatoga and Nandi, a place called Kambisi, there's a big hole in the highway. It took weeks to fix it up. Massive hole. So much water. One lane near Semo went, one lane near Nawai went, in Ba, a lot of landslides, roads are blocked. We don't know that it was going to happen, but it obviously has to happen. When I was 7 years old, there was a cyclone, some of you old enough to know, Hurricane Bibi. Hurricane Bibi came along, like the big thing in Fiji that time. The next cyclone that came in Fiji was 10 years later. 10 years later. Now if you get one cyclone in one season, you think you're very lucky. We now have 3 cyclones in a season. 4 cyclones in a season. During TC Yasa time, when it hit Vanuatu, the amount of rainfall that fell in 24 hours over here was the same amount of rainfall London gets in 1 year. And London is a rainy place. So you can imagine, we had the same amount of rainfall London gets in one year, and we got it in 24 hours. There's the difference. So we, as I said, we're changing the economy, we bring about a lot of changes to make businesses easy. We are seeing, like, in the agriculture sector, last year with the highest amount of exports in the agriculture sector, a lot of yangona, ginger, and turmeric. Turmeric haldi, they put in the curry. That seemed to be a superfood now. A lot of people want it. They said, get the powder, you mix it with the milk, drink it, makes your bones strong and all of that. Huge demand for that. A lot of people, for example, in Nanronga Novosa, up in the hills, they wild ginger, wild turmeric. They will dig it out. You may have some wild turmeric here, I'm not sure. Yeah, you have that. So there's huge demand for that. We're also seeing, just for information, we're seeing a lot of changes like globally. In Australia last week, in Melbourne, if you went to a public hospital, you had to wait 24 hours before somebody saw you. Why? Because there's a shortage of nurses in places like Australia. A lot of people don't want to work in a medical field in that place. The shortage of teachers. They took some money of our teachers this year. The shortage of accountants in Australia. Shortage of tradespeople. You know, the old people's home. You know, people work in the old people, what we call old people's home, what they call aged care. A lot of Australians don't want to do the job. I was about 2 months ago in Australia. I went to visit somebody in a aged care facility. Every single worker in that place was a foreigner. Someone was from Thailand, from Afghanistan, Philippines, because the locals don't want to do their job. What does it mean? It means they will take our people. They want to look for people from. A lot of teachers have been taken. They got a shortage of teachers in math, science, and physics in Australia. My brother-in-law works in a remote, rural town in Australia. He's a school teacher, high school teacher. The amount of allowances they get paid is like, you can't match it. Right? But so our people get attracted. What does it mean for us? There are already companies in Fiji that are bringing in workers for construction site from Bangladesh. There's a shortage of people. When Christchurch had an earthquake, a lot of our tradespeople, bricklayers, plastermen, plumbers, all were taken on short-term visas to New Zealand to help rebuild Christchurch, and now they've been given permanent residency. A few weeks ago, there was an advertisement in the newspaper. Australia has a shortage of chefs. They're offering 80 to 120,000 Australian dollars for chefs with more than 3 years experience. So if our chefs go there, who's going to be the chef in our hotel? Right? It's a big issue. If our nurses will get taken by Australia and the Middle East, we have to make sure we turn more nurses. We have to give more scholarship. Those are the areas we focus on. That's why if we look at things like TELS and toppers, a lot of our scholarships and TELS we give to people to become marine scientists, foresters, nurses. We don't give, for example, toppers for lawyers. There's too many lawyers. So we look at where there's a shortage. So those are some of the things that are challenges for us. That when we plan as a government, when we allocate budget funding, we have to address those issues. We can't only think about next year. We have to think what's going to happen in 5-10 years' time. Today in Fiji, 70% of the population is below the age of 40. Most of you over here, apart from this couple of ladies, I suspect, most of you are over the age of 40. You are in the minority. Majority of the population is below the age of 40. 65% of the population is below the age of 35. So we have to plan. When you have a young population, what does it mean? You get lots of babies. Young people make babies, old people don't make babies. Right? It's a fact of life. That's how biological system works. So if you're going to have a lot of young people, that means they'll make lots of babies. How are you going to look after those babies? If you're doing free education now, you're doing toppers and TELS, we have to make sure the same system applies to them also. Some people are coming along and say, don't worry, we make university free. It's not sustainable. Because you have to think about the people coming in 5-10 years' time. You don't only think about now. So those are the things we have to consider also when we're planning budgets. Did you know minimum wage has been increased to $4? By January of next year, it will become fully $4. Every quarter it gets increased, minimum wage. When we review the minimum wage, we get an expert from Australia, a gentleman called Dr. Patak. He comes along, he looks at the economy, he looks at what's happening. And so, for example, he'll also take into consideration. Now, assuming this gentleman, he has a shop, or he has a small business. If he employs 5 people or 7 people, and he's paying them $268, if we say to him, from tomorrow, we want you to pay $5. He may say, yeah, enough. I've got 7 people. I can't afford to pay them all $4 or $5 or $5. 3 of you can go home. I'll make do with 4 people. So when this expert comes, he looks at those things. Well, will there be any job losses or not? Because we don't want people to lose jobs. A lot of small businesses will find it hard if you jump the wages overnight. So that's why this $4 has been done over 1 year. So by January we get $4. We'll of course in the budget continue to invest in education, health services, infrastructure development, connectivity, and of course other public services. So our budget submissions close actually this coming weekend. If you have any ideas, you can email it to us or you can send it to us. I also wanted to very quickly, if you go to this website, I know you may not get internet here all the time, but if you go to Samsavu, a lot of the information is actually available on our webpage. I just wanted to, I've got the TELS here. Just for TELS and coppers, in this year's budget, we're spending $156.5 million. Our budget for education is $700 million. You remember, all the teachers in the world, in Fiji, we pay their salaries. All the civil servants, can somebody guess how much wages we pay all the civil servants in 1 year? Can somebody take a guess? What's our wage bill? Maybe the ladies at the back below. How much money do you think we pay the civil servants? Everybody combined. Police, everybody. We pay $1.1 billion a year. That's our wage bill. So all the DOs, the Turangani Koros, everybody around, if you pay all the salary together, the police, corrections, RFMF, Ministry of Lands, Itoke Affairs, everybody, salary is $1.1 billion. Our total expenditure is about $3 billion. So out of that, then $2 billion is left for what we call running government, pay for the fuel, pay for the toilet paper, photocopying paper, pay the rent. Then the rest of the money is used for what we call capital construction. We do connecting people with electricity, bridges, jetties, all of those things. So education gets $700 million. We also introduced what we call a TEL stream, the TVET, through FNU. We go to villages, we do boat building, carpentry, joinery, the 2-week course, 3-week course. Those are the things we're also funding now through TVET. Now I just want to show you over here, unemployment benefit from the FNPF. Through FNPF we paid $205 million in that period. From March 2020 to June 2021 we paid $205 million. First round of $90, $10.6 million. 2 rounds of $50, it came to about $21 million. 2 rounds of $360, $106 and $87 million. One more level assistance, of course, those of you, some of you may have got the $100, you would have applied for that. Already we paid out $2 million for that. So altogether, $432 million has been paid out in direct cash. Now one thing is really interesting, is that all of these monies were paid out with nobody having to go and line up at the BO's office, or the Turangani Koro's place, or the provincial office, or the Ministry of Poverty Alleviation. Everything was done on the phone. You apply on the phone, you get paid on the phone. You obviously make things a lot easier. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'll end there. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have. If you want to make any statement, you can. Don't hesitate to speak in the vernacular language. You can speak in the Itoke language or Hindi or Chinese. We've got translators here. Don't worry. Okay? So now we're grateful for your time and thank you once again for having us. Somebody, if just put up your hand, somebody will go around with them.
Endo sangana nungu kerkere. Mewe santo chung nangunang belabong ko nungu wamuri tuwe na dona project ni susumanu-manu. Awasanga ni kerea, ertua sole biau, ya me ada bacumengo se senga tunga ni dona madala ni project ya. Aku sa may kerkere kina kerawa ni kimamimbaw railing balatani na susuman-manu ko senga ngani ang abiyaw yang ang barabitaw zongo. Kaya ukireki na kerawa muni bukay kito na kena marroy na manu ina vonua ke tau tukukina. E rauta tiko ni rusanga bulu kalima na tina ni bulu makau tukupiki tau. Via tini na luvena lalai e tiko. Kua na lenga e tiko ni sara moku bulu makau talitonga na tiko e ruku ni ponua ke tau tukukina. Tu saba masuti tau tiko na vuna ni manu tu ngole ngayani tu le stalmai. Mea dhaba maingo sembera nindo na madala pala tanani tu kerkeri. Kene karua tu sango ndona chikini pepa membaleta ndona nomuni wala bola. Oya wa kautumbe ka mewali wan dina ni ndona kisi membaleta na nomuni wala bola na Attorney General. Mea dhaba tuko mengo ayala takatubia una nomuni lawyer. Me na wakautamai na allowance mbeka se do vangata kibira na vandina ni nomuni matabilawai. Awa ngole kina ilambasa ule sumai ngole tali sabsabu. Yala takibia me azob sa weni kuwa sembere tungani ndona ka azomai. Ko saya turang minsta.
Okay, we have staff that can come to you. There's a lady there behind you, and we have a lot of the economy staff. Please give your details to her regarding your request regarding the fencing material for your cattle, and please also give your name and phone contact details regarding the case, which case you appeared for, and we can follow up about your allowance. Okay. Naga. Anybody, if you have any personal problems, please put your hands up. We've got staff going around, and they can, give them your contact details and tell you what they are. You can also, of course, we want people to be able to ask about the budget too. There are a lot of people we go to these meetings where they have their personal problems. Sometimes people get a bit mandua to stand up and talk about their personal problems. Don't hesitate. We got staff here, and you can talk to them about it. Okay. Naga, thank you.
Rani pamadal talam na balele kona case assistant program registration. Rani saraka talam na balele wala.
Benefit?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for Vanuatu, we had announced the $100 assistance. In that you could apply. My understanding is already closed now for Vanuatu. It's gone across to Tavyuni. You go to Tavyuni and Ramea. So if you missed out on the Vanuatu one, you could apply. We had advertised it on the radio and TV and Facebook, and we've already paid out $2 million under that. This was to help, people in Vanuatu who were still, unemployed or had some problems in terms of accessing. So there is a one-off payment of $100. We also, anybody that's on social welfare benefit, we gave them a one-off $50 also. As you know that, we started the disability allowance. Before, people are disabled, they never got any allowance. Now we give $90. We also gave, as you know, we started off what we call the pension of $100 a month. Because we discovered a few years ago, there's a lot of people in Fiji who, when they get old, they don't have any FNPF because they never worked for anybody formally. A lot of ladies, a lot of women, they stayed at home, never worked for anybody, didn't have FNPF. Or some, if you go to even places like Suva, etc., people work at what we call in Fiji house girls, what we call house help. So they never had FNPF. So now they're old, there's no money. So we brought down the age from 70, then we brought it down to 65. So anybody now that's over the 65 and above, they didn't have FNPF, we give them $100 a month. So even if the husband and wife are alive, we give them $100 a month. It really helps a lot of people. Also, society is changing now. especially in the towns and cities, a lot of the children don't necessarily look after the parents now too. Whereas before in Fiji we depend on the nuclear family, you know, everybody live in one big house, people helped each other. Now it's kind of changing a bit too. So the, you know, the elderly couple, they want their own money too. We were in Nandi the other day, and one gentleman stood up and said, you know, I want you to solve this big problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, you know, when I go to catch the minibus, there are too many people pushing and shoving. Then don't form one straight line. So can the government do something about it? So I said, look, I really can't do anything about that. It's an attitudinal thing. If we want to, you know, treat each other well, then please form one line. So sometimes in the budget consultation, we get some very funny requests. I want to see if there's any funny requests from Loa Village or
not. First of all, I would like to thank the Honourable Minister for the presentation of the budget. We know how the government runs, and some of the things is beyond our control. And we appreciate what the government is doing during these hard times, especially during the hurricanes. This COVID came in. Nobody is left behind. I look at the civil servants, they no pay cut. I think they should be happy. That's why I'm saying to the government for what it's doing for all the people. As I look around, nobody is left out all around Fiji. And I'm happy that today people have been told what is going on in the government. And I have to present something for my village. As we know, this area is undeveloped, especially with electrification. And we need that. We would like to take part in the growing of the economy. We've got lands. We've got, if you come down on the hillside, it's full of resources. First, we need electrification for that. And internet. One of our schools there is a real problem with internet, if it can be helped. With my village, we are sitting under Wakatunua. Our request if we can help with the evacuation center. And during the last hurricane, we got flood in the village. We need a seawall. We need a generator. Today we have been looking for a generator, but we need a generator for the village. You see, people need farm roads. There's no roads in the farms. We need that. Last week we just applied for Angona export. We need government support with that. We would like to buy Angona all around here before going, instead of going to Sub-Sabu to pound Angona, so we need to have it here. So it will create employment. And nothing with a village, it will be tasseled. Lots of dust every day. And our village is the gateway to Tabiuni. Vehicles coming every day, and we have a problem. If the government can look at that, if our village can be tasseled. And also our water system can be upgraded so the water can reach the jetty. We won't tell the government. We are giving the jetty, we are putting up a list for the jetty to be used. And that's why we want development in this area. Once the jetty is developed, it will be good for the community. A barge will be riding daily to Tabiuni, daily service, and there's 2 boats going every day. So we need support of government for that. But what I'm saying that thank you for the good budget, and we hope it will be carried out.
In fact, regarding electrification, we had a number of projects that were lined up. But of course, because of COVID, we had to slow them down. We could check very quickly for you and let you know when is the extension going to be done. The other issue that we're finding now is that sometimes when government does also make allocation, because we are now outsource it to EFL. So EFL does it all for us. So EFL, they have certified contractors who can do it. At the moment there's about only 20 contractors. So we're asking EFL to get more contractors to be trained, because you have to be trained in running those lines. You can't just have anybody. So if we get more contractors trained and certified, then we can do more projects a lot more quicker. So that's that's what actually had happened with the COVID slowing it down. But I mean, you're absolutely right. We need more electrification, which we have. As you know, before, to get rural electrification, the community had to contribute 10%. So even if you want electrification in this village, if there's 50 homes, if 40 gave it, but the other 10 didn't, it won't happen. So we reduce it from 10 all the way to 0 now. So not a single cent is paid by the people getting connected. So we can find out very quickly for you. We do have through FRA a program to tahsil roads where there's a church, a temple or a mosque, and also villages, or there's a lot of people living, or if there's a school. So again, it had been slowed down because of COVID, but now as the economy picks up, those things will also happen too. So that's, we're not doing you a favor, that's part of the program, they'll get done. You know what I mean? So it's not like just because you come here, therefore we'll get your village tahsil, but there's a program throughout Fiji. We do villages, we do places of worship, because sometimes you just find a church somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So we do the tahsil in front of it. And we do schools. So that's part of the program. We also, as you know, once you get electrification here, we do village street lighting. That's part of what we're doing throughout. Everywhere there's a village electrification, we do street lighting also.
There's a question, there was hydro somewhere here. Some of them are here. If they can give us some picture of it.
Madalam dani, turang minister, tuna development committee main bola, una bosa ngapa wabiti, meba ani bosa tio turang ni nambuta. There's nobody left over or left down behind. Wambuta ito, alawa gamay na budget na 2018 sana la ini upgrade na hydro. By this time, matentu automatic to indini we don't like that generator. Sa nreba lebo tutanga. Patama bin sa solewe. Ercho na matentu may nangaw na 2018 may nangaw ngo sambercho ando ayado may nabunitutu ni hydro and upgrade tai. Ia emani rawa. Ucho na committee mani batur dete erani solibi ito se ndatu da batina matentu so we can go out ito reda me sono sacho ito sono expert artu da talcho na matentu erani bu ito na bu nitu sanga na hydro me ito na bu batina na bi or la italacho ngom ito na grid batala ngamai en na sola solicho matentu cho mai to bis bona sa do na bi sai tunang minister.
I just got Kamal who sits on he looks after all the infrastructure and Ministry of the Economy. He's saying in that area there were certain parts that are required to upgrade it. So that was not available. So there's funding for it in the new budget coming up to upgrade it, to get the right parts. Because as you know, because of COVID, a lot of things had stopped also. But in respect of the extension, there's no program on that at the moment. But the parts are there to upgrade it, to build capacity. What they can do is then they will look at where and how they can do the extension and how much it will cost, because obviously it costs a bit more money to do the extension. But we need to make sure that we fix it up first. Okay? And that's in the next financial year.
Donataro. Badawan sa uniaya ko sa Lahotengo na budget. It will come down again one day or will be up there?
Yeah, we hope it will come down really quickly. You know, as we said, that a lot of these things are out of our control. So I said to somebody the other day, if you're eating bread every day, you don't want to pay the high cost, please try and eat uto and dalo and cassava. That's something that we grow. Eat bele, bhaji, bhindi, bora, all those things. That's how we can, you know, go through this particular period. There are obviously some other things that we have to pay for because we don't make it in Fiji. Like everybody in Fiji likes to put onion in the miti. Onion is not grown in Fiji. So people like to put onion and garlic in their curry. It's not grown in Fiji. So we have to look at where we have the advantage. So, I mean, obviously as a government, we don't have any control over that. What we do control is things like VAT. If we did not make VAT 0%, we'd be paying 9% more for all those things. But you know, because you no longer pay VAT for those 21 items, we lost, government revenue lost $165 million, sorry. $165 million revenue we lost. But that's okay, because we want people to pay less, because those are everyday items. So that's how we balance it. But you know, as I mentioned, that we are hoping the cost of freight will come down soon. That's one factor. And we are told by the shipping companies that around about September, October, the cost of freight should start coming down because China has opened up. So that's, you know, that's what has an impact. If the war, God willing, if the war stops tomorrow, all that wheat will be made available. All the oil will start, the gas will start, so the price will come down. But even in normal times, I don't know how many of you notice, but when it's winter in the northern hemisphere, in Europe and America, the price of fuel and gas always goes up. Because they need those things to keep warm. So there's a high demand. During the winter, there's a high demand, so the price of those things go up. After winter, it drops down again. The same thing in Fiji. When you have tomato season, one plate of tomatoes is like $2. No tomato season, $5, $7, and then you buy the imported tomato. I hope that answers your question. No.
Ia wawinivina na budget da wale besar lan sangira ramatudo imam rongo da singani ua ila oya umanda ve vai alolelete nungu via mi madangoi bala tanure da ni lavu ni matan tu nak ena vingara vivitira ramba singani vingara velangan do na province se do na nak oroi vingara vivitira ramba na matan tu ya wavini vinatu ina ni dari dana raramba ni vingara vini matentu wavini vinatu intelanga budget na nona rei na matentu 14 years 15 years 20 years vira sasudu vira talanga sambersudu na valeu sara eu wararama tai sara na valeu na vu ni budget da vavasa matene tu na saulevu ni ka di mimi va matata vi mimi mataganiwa la sarara maviman ia Attorney General ena singitaro va ani mimi ani na matentu. Sorry for that. We have to request we always talk about money, so imem na area la talanga na vivu ena mataganiwa matai o bebarete na o vengraviti o na region go Cakaudrove Ivanua 7 villages. Na nonra consent se na nonra na leuni community o we meet unik imni na matagani kwa. Not personal. This is for the community. Donak oro chu sarna o chu chinik oro nangon sala ngolengo mendalo one tu la saril. Erangole chu na vimataka kena viaka vernangone vuli na korongo. But beside the village there is a river there. Viu sa chundo na kiri adritan. Ke walevu ernangalova adritan tumisan kandua. Wachar ngalevu onto. Au kera wani ndavu ke na kalvat sarna. Merani buke anonondra ngole chigo na ngone ena ve mataka ikorvuli ena nonda sugo mai ena ochena vuli ya ndakunimba na Korea. If you heard about that village name, Ndakunimba, the last village in this area, the Cakaudrove Vanua. I'm looking after this area. Au matan ina chigo sana ko. Ya Ndakunimba ena karua imem iretalanga na Vodafone Tower and digital. But na vitartara ndende sarwali. Imemigo. Evoka itu nama Vodafone mewawa senga melagol meluma ina nanduro ngi imemi voli telefon. Sinda ni imem na voli telefon tumiwa ko ngi sengitu nandu. Belatara kartu turchigo nilele na tamata chugo na eriom. Ina tamata rasa voli telefon tumai. Ngi sengitu nandu. Imem sangi vangra na vunwe lama ina na network. So rangalo iwai. Sora lau ulun Vanua. Yang nunda kere-kere talangan na community sana. Ndotale. Kemem singi kere na EFL. Kemem chungo ambaleta na upgrade mai na sola. Le sona oro chungo rasa va sola chung mai type 2. Ene lumai type 1. Gorso rasa type 2 chung. Galata na vime menamatan tu ni may upgrade ngo na type 2 sonak or. E sonak or talanga chu na onro givonung gor sember saranga na sol. Dona lengal levu virna ngone vulu nondra vuli lesun. Ersevang tinitung e sona dinala light. Merachu nondra vuli lesun ngone. Au kerani reidi lesungo. Sa vida na nema kere lau vai vola vertona tambanan energy na nada. Lembas. Senga ciwarin to ena madala na ngono ko. Kerawa ni na tarong le serai di lesu na ere baleta na sol. Kena dua tale. Dona koro venga ravikina bangasau. Ratu kereci ono ratu wai. Salak wacin ratu vola. Bulan isa tunggu ono nambak. Eva ngaunanga nandolan wai. Dona lenggele betul ngavir nene memingone vulingo. Nakana lenga juno wai. Au innovik ni na matakan erani reidi lesu go mengaravi na project go. Balata kay to ngavango in tala na settlement ya ereo enona wai sadaka uchitungo. Kwa muri. I know that person that he comes to your office in Suva. I don't want to mention the name. Yeah. Go na kere indo na community. It's not personal. Kera ni vivu na nomni tambana. Ena kerechi umerawawe tak na orongo ena vukunda nangone. Nisa chiku sa na Wales ni matentu chiku na Attorney General. Ya vida na kere o varita chuvi emni ena mata kanigwa.
Those specific issues about the village, the culverts, all of that. Please, we'll get the staff, we'll give you all the details. I can't tell you now, yes, it's going to get done in this budget. But we do have, as you know, we have, as I mentioned in FRA, we got some special allocation for what we call non-FRA roads. In the non-FRA roads, we also do things like culverts. So if you give us the details, we'll get the staff. It may be able to come into the non-FRA roads, especially if it's a question of just a few culverts to cross to the school, right? Is that the issue? Yeah. And also with the water project. I don't know who you're talking about comes to my office. From who? What's the letter about? I don't know what you. But I haven't met anybody from Cakaudrove Junction. Was the letter signed by me? Can't be. I don't sign letters like that. I don't sign letters regarding water projects. But again, if the issue is about water, we can find out what the issue is, yeah? Kamal here sits on the Water Authority Fiji board. He's from Ministry of Economy. So, we've also got some rural water projects too. So we can look at them. Please highlight, those are very important issues. Let me just explain something about Vodafone connection. You see, to put up one tower, a lot of the best of the times a tower can cost $500,000. $500,000, sometimes $750,000. So the way the companies they think like this. They say, okay, there's a village there. For us to connect that village, we have to put a tower that's going to cost us, say, $500,000. And there's 50 people in that village. If they spend $10 a month, that's $500. That's $6,000 a year. So our tower costs $500,000, so we're not going to put up the tower. That's how they think. We have a program called Universal Service Access. So with the mobile phone companies, we charge them a levy. We started charging them a levy. So some of the profit, they put it into an account. We then, together, we put money into that account too. We've identified about 300 places in Fiji where there's no connectivity, or there's what we call brown spots. Sometimes you get it, or you go and hang off that coconut tree, then you get connection. Some places are like that. So we've identified those places. We're already in the process of calling for tenders. What we've said before, the model was this. When we used to call for tenders, you have Digicel or Vodafone. So whoever is the cheapest, they'll get the tower. What we're saying now is this. We'll put one tower and both of them share it. So you can get both Vodafone and Digicel. Because sometimes Digicel may be cheaper for data, the other one may be cheaper for voice. So you get a customer choice. When you have only one phone, see, when we were driving along over here, I had no connection. And somebody said, oh, but Digicel works. Right. But if we had both of them working, then you can have a choice. So that's what we're doing. But earlier on, the issue about the school internet, we have a program. We've already spent about $1.4 million in Vanuatu, just connecting schools, as I mentioned earlier on, to internet and also, the Wi-Fi of the school area. We're looking at doing more. So that's part of the program, to get the schools connected to internet very quickly. I don't know how many of you know, but when you go back to Savu, if you see near the airport, there's one, we landed the submarine cable. You see on the right-hand side, when you go from here, there's a submarine cable has landed. Now, that has given Vanuatu huge capacity. TFL is starting to lay a fiber optic cable from Savu all the way to Lambasa. When they lay that, that means a lot more people will get connected. And it makes it easier now for mobile phones to pick up that connectivity. What we are doing, I didn't sort of mention that in the address. One sector in Fiji during COVID grew 3,000 new jobs. And that is what we call the BPO sector. The BPO sector is what's called business processing outsourcing. For a lot of countries like in Australia, New Zealand, USA, Britain, it's cheaper for them to have somebody, say in Fiji, answering phone calls for companies. So if you say in Australia, and you ring up your bank to ask about something, when you call that number in Australia, the phone call gets diverted to Suva. And you have a Fijian person answering the phone, say, good day mate, how can I help you this morning? That's what's happening. A lot of accounting services, insurance processing is coming to Fiji. We want to really grow that area. So one of the things we've said, we want those BPO businesses to start in Vanuatu also. Because we want the Vanuatu people to stay in Vanuatu. We want to send people from Viti level to Vanuatu. Because you've got a lot of land. So a lot of business opportunities. As you know that the World Bank, we're doing a program with them. You met them, right? So one of the problems is that Vanuatu does not have very good airline connectivity. So we are looking at a site, they'll be close by both to Lambasa and Savu, so we can land bigger planes. Those are the kind of things we want to do to create more economic activity. But with those specific ones, please get the staff. They'll come and get the details of you and your contact details, so we can get back to you quickly and tell you what's going to happen. Okay. Thank you.
There's a lot of mahogany. Taumanda Navaduna Lebanabuni budget consultation.
Mai pādur na sambung ita ni ua. Mami maro tena vali una tuputua ni matentu. Sanu tena tu ni rani mami na hui vali una ni budget consultation ni mami na tu na vi oro. Mami au mai na luman ni vi orlelevu. Sa ruambeanga na tutu jongo me na varotene no ni vali volvola matai na liba na sarong te coba na mateni chin sa varotene chen na sola type 2 au lamai na ni sa sibita mai na chocho mai na bon mi tu na bonon titi levu na saranga na vale rotu no ngoni vuli seleng kasartunga na nonra dina ni vuli lesoni na bimbong patalangena na orvuli mai na bon sanga tundra vadi ni sin raw ni ngarabi na vuli I lesoni ni mbong ndendre vali vernang kasin vuli ramber vali vorno ve imami na vuli non vuli balai tan sini raw na vuli lesoni mer vuli sen vena orna ve imami raw tani vasavul avitu wil tangina orna vuli mai na bongo ramina tavali na sola type 2 berni adamai na EFL ombutan donangon san rani adamai na menatar imam talngamai rani lam dangamai merani raramteni rana wima tawuvali vasavul avitu wil ina orna vuli mai na bongo merani vu irna lu imam nangaw nandendre ngona ni mbol-mbole memi sasota ay chungo and rosanga sembalatan na nomoni pamadaltan chumbalatan pension scheme aule wana tu na matibal memi sading memi ereto na aftercare fund aure na ronga tu na social welfare ni sa tostala chonga na laboratory itu bondo tunga na labangole me imami na belatan aftercare fund ele ni sa tosta ni sa ni atodo Sanden reserangan ni mami rawan ni bangatina na ivotopotea en wuni tosda ni sauniaya eva oni sapa madala choina en wuni budget consultation na matagile sango erasanga muni renderai talanga na after kiafan eren tosi talanga en nomuni tutu ba ilabu en matagile ni mencosta na turangan na Attorney General no legislative fonting to barden chunga bidana tutu lele ami urchanga ni vi aiso in my vaso sati in Sambongi Dada and Ua, Savan and Live.
Unaka, thank you. For the aftercare fund, we've had other submissions on that too. I know some people saying social welfare has gone up, but aftercare fund has not. That's something that we'll be looking in the budget. I'm not saying it increased, but we're looking at it. We'll let you know through the budget. In respect of the other issue about the type 2 solar, just please give the details to the staff so we can get back to you and let you know what can happen. Thank you. Okay, please.
Yau do sangkata vale wana nomoni matentu. Ya babu na vale muni rau yo mo rongo le chona muni pamatala. Au rele tona nomoni tutu wa ilavo. Rele ni di busarna saka chongo ye na bina tine nei labo onge redo ende to mandanga ngo se to nandinau ka donga no watutu rawalanga wurta nando matin tungo era nirto sulelanga mana nando misini o chongo go nando walislisi mera vanga te ineran tingele tungo ko ula narani demu ina na wata taro ni taro ti odam saro sole bu mesuka si wai si asa tulu le chongo sin ava ilavo eve rawanga burtonum do walislisi e burtoron suya mai na norto yaya misini fa na trekta mira ni bangaten kelungo ndo titi ina sindani memna va lewta ina ni titi eba imam bangaten tunga na mateva sa imam sala va lewu na tumon titi itu na trekta isanga tuna en operator usando vita tarvale wonum do walislesio ringono sanje baltan tamban wotawi na norto diga mamila avana drain sa uchingo vita batana amba isanga tuna Imami ora le babina o mana ni mami wa olo una rede ni ro tunga na vi barevingo sin ro tunga mena ngone bulu no burubura ya eva a unura ni sulia manda mai suna ya nga setungango mdo sangatal ni la mo bulu mai no mdo mesini no mdo diga sin mdo trekta mira ni mai dava dirota irna famos tungo rongo din dovina tavale vunan dalo dovina tavale vunan jinja yo sabina chini no mesini senangera ni lengu ini mena sindin tang tapu saru solo na suka sen solo wai tapu saru tu inara ni lengu na bata taro ewa emamisana tiba ninga ni mchiningele mbole na angai vina chitura na minsta ewa ni vasulo birmanu munibal silos mersula mena mesino e mo tungango na munibal baba elelo.
I don't want to say too much about what's going to be in the budget because I can't tell you everything is going to be in the budget. But we are looking at ways as to how we can get more machines accessed for the farmers. The old way of doing things is that government has machines, then the farmers request, then government gives them gets somebody to come and operate it, and they charge a rate that's far less than what you would do privately, right? So like some of the tractors would be $100 an hour, but you pay a government $28 an hour. So we want to change that. I can't tell you now how, but I want to do that. It's very important for us to do that. And one of the ways of dealing with it is what we call outsourcing. Outsourcing means that government may pay a bit more, but we give it to certain companies to do it. We say, this area is yours. We'll pay you, and you make sure every time these farms get, cleared, the drains get done. Because at the moment, when government has the machinery, like you said, you have to wait. Then the driver may not come to work, then you have to wait even more. If one part breaks down in Loa, you have to go and get it from Sabu, maybe Lambasa, then you have to wait. Some of the things that we've done in other parts of government, we've outsourced everything. We say, that's your job, we call for tenders for private companies. Your responsibility is to run this thing. If it breaks down, your problem. If it breaks down for too long, you pay us penalty. So we're looking at new ways. I know it's an issue, and sometimes people in different ministries, they don't want to think outside the box. We in the Ministry of Economy like to think outside the box. So hopefully we'll have a solution for you. I know it's a real issue. I know it's an issue.
Anongu ora sanga niada wangon sala. Elevo ave siko matentu siniada nongu ora wali mana anas. Nasota leviu ala ni big man. Nangonan launga siniada itu ya ni avivu ni wai. Napuno itu cuina. Ya sawitu ngo itu chu endoi waro. Ni sasu endo ponu alisi mbaravi mi itu navaro adu mi itu metarval ina mi itu wa oro ina pero ni itu staba ina vivu imatentu benavel.
Please get one of the staff over here too to get all the details down. See what we can do.
My name is Johnny Taoi. I hail from Vanova to Lau, my maternal links to this village. And I missed you yesterday in Sabsab. So I had to come all the way here to catch up with you. Got a taxi on my way to work. I'm a musician guitarist at the Custo Resort. And I told my taxi driver, straight to Loa, I got to catch this man. I'm very happy. I'm grateful for your presentation. Very fruitful, informative, and I'm sure most of these villages will agree with me that Well done. Thank you. Two issues I'd like to raise. I think last time we spoke was in 2015. You remember Cliff from Kulukulu regarding the Ngarawalu borehole intervening, the payout, the compensation. And we spoke on the phone. And you made the compensation come easy. It took us almost 22 years to go through previous governments. We couldn't get through. But I want to thank you for making it easy for us. We got a payout of 75% and 25% still to be paid out to us. Now, Water Authority has made some excuses regarding the area, the boundary, whereby 6,000 square meters was allocated for purchase. And they've only fenced up 1,000 plus square meters. The rest of the area, they have discarded it. But sir, they've damaged the land. It was used for stockpiling. The metal and the corrugated iron is still there. We cannot plant it anymore. No, even corn. No ndalo, no bananas can be planted there. So I think I was there before COVID to get the rest of the payout, so they made an excuse. So I thought, if you can look into the matter, there's 25% yet to be paid out to us. For the Ngarawalu borehole. And the second thing, another issue regarding the Kurimba. Can you hear me? I spoke to the Turangani Korok, I think it was last year. He raised an issue regarding fish, because they do a lot of fishing, and they want some ice box and ice machine. So I just suggested to him, why not design a smoker for this area? I think you remember your friend Roland Lilo from Lotoka. He was going to get to you, but we're still waiting there. I suggested we have some smoking device. You have to do with ice and stuff, storage. I think smoked fish would be the best for this area. And export, if you can find export for smoked fish. I think I know for a fact it's a demand in New Zealand. For the Maoris, you know that, they eat a lot of smoked fish. And if you can find us a market and device for smokers and distribute in the village. So that's all.
Thank you. Can we just, Kamal will come and talk to you about the first issue, about the balance of the 25% to be paid. And then we can sort that out. Again, the other issue about fisheries, that's again, somebody will take some information regarding that. I mean, I can't comment whether smoking would be good or not. That's something that the fisheries guys can make a comment on that. I know a lot of smoked fish from Wanwalevu gets sold in Lotoka, which a lot of people use. Whenever I go to Lotoka, I always go and buy the smoked fish because I love smoked fish.
Yeah. Depends on how you get the smoke it properly, so it's screen dry. Pack it and then export it. This is a suggestion that you have a packing machine here as well for this area. There's a lot of people to go fishing, and the ice is very costly. Transportation from here to Sabsabu. Whereas if you have a smoke machine here, you got firewood to cater for the fuel. This is I just recommend something like that, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Are you still performing at Custo?
I just came this morning.
You know, in the last year's budget, any live band that plays at a hotel, and we're extending it to the dancing groups, if they pay you any money, they can claim 150% from government. Because that's how we also increase jobs. Because nowadays, as you know, a lot of the hotels, they play the techno music.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a lot of talent, a lot of singers. So we want them to hire a lot of singers. So if they hire the singers, if they pay you $100, they can claim $150 from government.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I can come and see you sometime.
Please no, not you. The hotel can claim from it. You can't claim it from us.
No. So I just took a week off for Monday to come and see you in the office in Suva.
Oh.
And I'm so lucky I heard you were here.
We heard you wanted to see me, so I came here.
Yeah, no. Yeah, well, it saved me a lot of cost going to Suva.
Yes,
And, thank you very much for being here for us, for the people.
Before I want to raise the floor issue, I just want to take this opportunity on the behalf of the law and the law youth. I just want to take this opportunity to say a word of thanks to you. I've been here for the last 10 years. As you can see, from the past government, one of you, from the Prime Minister's office, or for the leader of Fiji, arriving in our village. So, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you very much for being here in Loa Village, for being sharing us, for enlightening us for the budget for the 2022. So, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you very much for being here today. Thank you very much, Mr. AJ, for being here. We pray God so we can show our blessing to you. As I continue, Mr. AJ, I'm part of the youth here in Loa. As you can see, Loa is one of the red zone in Fiji. Is it? It's one of the red mark in drugs, in the marijuana, here in Vinolib. So, as part of the Loa youth, I just want to raise a few issues to you. As part of, we just want, part of the world today is about money. We commit marijuana just for money. We've been taking our care to all the past government. They always said to us, wait, we'll pick it up. Ito nang ikotalag. From that government till now, we're happy. We follow the leader of Fiji, as you can hear today. So, as a youth, want to raise you. What about you can be taking us Loa youth? We want to be part of the NEC program. As you can see, we alone the community villages. They used to build their village hall. Your government can give the money. So what about you? Can spend to us. You can send 20 of us. You send a 3 years to send back to Nambak. You send a 3 years contract, and you send for 6 months. 10 boys prepare one account for the koro, so they can drop $2,000 a week, so they can build a village hall. We hope you can provide that opportunity to us. And secondly, as you can see, we want to fight crime here. There's a lot of playing rugby happening in this place, so we want to have a playground for the youth to commit in playing rugby rather than commit another crime. Today, I just want to ask you, Mr. AG, as you can enlighten us today, as you can have one ground of being taken Australia, so that we can be minimize the crime here in the triangle. And thirdly, for community, as you can see, waves coming in about to climate change. So we ask you, as you can help us. Thank you.
In fact, there's a couple of things obviously I had not mentioned, but that would be made in the budget announcement. A couple of things, the NEC. We have an agreement now with the Australians called the Pacific Labour Scheme. You have to register with NEC, National Employment Centre. We don't choose people. The Australians come and choose. That's the agreement. So what they do, there are different companies in Australia. So somebody may send a recruiting agency to have people for fruit picking. Somebody may come and choose them to do work in an abattoir, Some people come and work, now it's growing, like aged care homes, those types of things. So what we do as a government, we facilitate. We make sure that all the people who get registered, you give the correct information. When they come, we give all the information available to them. They do the selection. We don't have a say in it. So they do the selection. So sometimes we've seen they choose people based on their age, based on their gender, their male, female, look at what skill sets they have. Sometimes they look at the person is physically able to do it or not, those kind of things. So what we do is we present the people to them and then they choose. So we can't say to them, hey, choose 10 people from law. They decide themselves. And now they're giving 3-year contracts, a lot of them. I was in Australia about 2.5, 3 months ago, and I went to a place called Wagga Wagga. It's in country New South Wales. A lot of them work in the abattoir. So I had in the town hall, I had a meeting with them. There's quite a few of them turned up. And they talk about things like, I want to buy a car for my wife. How do I send money? Can I put money in savings? How do I do that? We asked a lot of those questions. They asked about elections too, but we mainly focus on the financial well-being. So just to be clear, we don't do the selection. We only present the people to them, like everybody applies. Say, look, these are all the applications from Savu, Lambasa, and they go through the profile themselves. They send lots of people and they do the profiling. Number one. Number two, I know this is the Golden Triangle. They call it the Golden Triangle. I remember a few years ago when I worked at the DPP's office, I remember this gentleman from Ra. He was prosecuted for growing marijuana. And he said, I grow it because of this level. Pesa. He said, because when I grow dalo and cassava, I have to take it down to the market. When I grow marijuana, they come to me. Logical sense. And he was the only guy in the village with a concrete house and he had Skype. And he said, I bought my twin cab cash. So it's for some people it's an economic issue. I know what you're saying. But of course there's the downside of marijuana too. We've seen some people who smoke too much, they end up places they cannot be functional. You would have heard us announce in the budget that we want to introduce industrial hemp in Fiji. Just 2 weeks ago I had a meeting with the United Nations team. So industrial hemp is, you see, marijuana, there are various kinds of marijuana. There's a thing called THC, tetrahydrochlorofluoride, I think it's called. And that's what gives you the high. The lower the THC, the less high you get. So industrial hemp, you should have it below 1% and below. So that's the market we're going for. Industrial hemp, if you smoke one entire hill, you still won't get high. That's how, it doesn't have much of THC in it. So we talked about what we can do about it. We want to start the farms. It has to be done under license. And but we have to get the plants from overseas. There's a particular type of plant. We want to have the Fiji National University. They got a agriculture school, so they plant all the seedlings, and then we distribute the seedlings. That's the system we're going to come up with. And obviously, places like this where you're still already growing ordinary marijuana, it's a good soil. You can grow that. But before we do that, one of the things we have to make sure is that we don't get blacklisted by other countries. Because if you don't do it properly, other countries will say, oh, they're dealing in drugs. So we'll stop their banks, banking system. So we have to make sure that doesn't happen. Number two, we have to amend the laws. So we were asking them, where do we get that particular seed for industrial hemp? The best one apparently is from Canada. So we have to bring what we call the mother seeds from Canada, grow a lot of it here, then we start distributing it. The next thing, of course, there's no point growing it if nobody's going to buy it. You need a market for it. So they make clothes, they make rope, they make concrete bricks, they mix it up. Industrial hemp is very good usage. So we have to make sure that there'll be people who buy it. And the at the right price. So all those things we are working out now. Once we get it done properly, then we'll start doing that. So there'll be some allocation made in the budget for that. That could be, what we call income substitution. There's one program, I don't know if you saw, we announced it about 3 weeks ago. We've got some very cheap funding from the World Bank, and we call it Jobs for Nature. Jobs for Nature program is available to youth clubs, women's clubs, and any other organized group. It's about $17 million over 3 years. It's $8 million US, about $17 million over 3 years. Where that money will be used to grow seedlings, mangroves, other types of trees, seagrass, and we will pay people $4 an hour to go and plant it. But it has to be like a youth club. It has to be a women's club. So that's going to start very soon. So that could be actually a job for you guys too.
Thank you.
And we will actually get in touch with you. We've just launched it. You can also apply, and it's available on the web page and all of that, but we can get somebody here to give you the information. So, or you can also plant fruit trees also. Like breadfruit trees, all those types of things. You see, one thing if you notice in Fiji, there's no uto, I don't know what you call breadfruit here. What do you call uto here? Uto. Uto. You call it uto? Yeah. Okay. You see, there's no uto plantation in Fiji. It all grows in the wild. There's no Eevee plantation in Fiji. No, every time it's Eevee, then break it from the bush, then you sell it by the roadside. There's no breadfruit plant. There's no mango plantation in Fiji, orchard. None. So there's a lot of stuff that grows wild in Fiji, we have not commercialized it. Because Eevee is what we call, Fijian chestnut. If there is enough supply, then people can open up a factory. We can can it, we can sell it in different ways. So that's what we're trying to also encourage through this. But we want to plant a lot of mangroves. So what we have, like the seawall, we're doing at the moment we're doing an entire study. Where are the places we need to build a seawall? Before the whole thinking was, Loa Village needs a seawall, just do the seawall. But we need to know how many places in Fiji needs a seawall. Maybe there's 3,000 kilometers of seawall. Now when we build a seawall, we have what we call nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions will mean essentially we don't just concrete wall it. We bring boulders, we plant mangrove in front of it, we do vetiver grass. When you plant a lot of mangroves, right, trees, we give the seedlings, then the crabs will come, you can catch the crab and sell the crabs. If you plant it properly, one day the tourists will come, you can go in the small boat around the mangrove, those kind of things. That's what we're trying to do, what we call nature-based solutions. So that's part of the plan. And the climate change guys will of course come to places like this very soon.
This morning about the budget consultation. You have come across to us. I am Soba Tambuawati of Loa Village. I'm running a shop for 2 years. I have a deep fridge and it's been run by a generator. It's a pity we do not have electricity. The cost of diesel is so high. I can manage to run my fridge now. I'm requesting the government, please, if you can help me with solar, 12,000 to 20,000, with an inverter and a solar fridge, so that I can buy and sell frozen goods in this community. And also buy from the ladies fish and sell if they have a good catch. I want to thank the government too for what it's doing for the whole of Fiji. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's gone off. Thank you very much for your comments. We'll get the lady standing next to you in a nice purple Sulu. She'll take the information from you.